All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to tonight's meeting of the Mulberry City Council special called meeting. Today is March the 31st, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. It is 6:31, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We don't have a pastor tonight to do an invocation, so we're going to start as we always do with a pledge. So if you're able, if you can stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if you have a copy of tonight's agenda, there's a couple things we're going to, well, first let me go ahead and call the roll of our screen after that. So I'm going to start and go in the order of the districts. From District 1, we have Councilman Tim Sullivan.
Present.
District 2, we have Councilman Michael Coker. I am here. District 3, Councilman Kyle Shields.
Here.
District 4, Mayor Pro Tem Michael Rudnick.
Here.
And the District 5, Councilman Doug Ingram.
Here.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you could notate that all 5 council members are here this evening and present. Tonight, because it's a special called meeting, there's a public notice. So we, just out of an abundance of caution, we're going to follow that public notice very carefully. So you'll notice if you picked up a copy of the agenda, there is a mayor's opening comments, council's opening comments, and a public comment. We, unfortunately, because those items were not in the public notice, we are skipping those items for tonight. So there will be no public comment tonight, but we will have public comment at our next regular meeting, which I believe is the 17th. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Thursday. Back to our regular scheduled Thursdays, April 17th. We will have public comment. All right. At this time, I will. Well, I've already discussed it on item G, consideration of tonight's meeting agenda. So we have the meeting agenda for this evening. I've already. I will formally make a motion to remove items E, F, and H, which are mayor's opening comments, council's opening comments, and then the public comment section, just to comply with the public notice exactly. Is there any other items that are errors or omission on the meeting agenda? All right, hearing none, then I will make a motion to amend the meeting agenda to remove items E, F, and H. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Shields. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, the amendment is adopted, and then at this time I will make a motion to adopt the special called meeting agenda as amended. I'm a little out of practice on this. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, it's unanimous that the special called meeting agenda for March 31st, 2025 is here, as amended, is hereby adopted. All right, moving on, the first item I is a second read of an ordinance. So I will turn this over to the City Attorney, Mr. Bill Riley, to discuss this one.
Mayor and Council, this is a second read of the ordinance of the City of Mulberry to provide for penalties for failure to appear summonses to the municipal court. We previously discussed this. This makes an ordinance violation if you fail to appear if you were properly served for the summons, and it gives us the methodology in which to bring you before the court with a warrant.
Is there any questions for the City Attorney about the second read of ordinance 2025-03-139?
Quick question.
Yes,
I know
sir.
we had a couple of code enforcement issues already. Did they comply, not require us to?
Well, we always serve the citations. This is the backup, is if somebody doesn't come, what we get to do.
Gotcha.
So if we give you a summons, you promise to come. If you don't, then we'll get a warrant and we'll give you a different kind of invitation.
So in those cases we've already had, it would be a correct assumption that the citation is enough to allow them to.
We have not had any we have not had any municipal courts yet, but we will next month.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions for the City Attorney? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-03-139 as read.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Ingram. Any discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, by a vote of 5, ordinance 2025-03-139 is hereby adopted. All right, the next item, we're going to move on to action items. Item J, the first is a discussion of the council policy manual. So I will turn it over to our interim city manager, Jamie Palmer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nice to see you all tonight. I wanted to kind of talk about items J, A, and B separately, but they're kind of go together. So what we would like to do is create a council policy manual, which basically outlines the procedures of all the things that we would do inside of the city from a staff standpoint, and that's where kind of all that would live. This would allow flexibility amongst you all as well as us if we wanted to make changes to that to those policies without having to go through the ordinance process of a first read or a second read. So these are just procedural matters that will live inside of the policy manual. So that is kind of the discussion part. There's not really an action item for it. If it's okay with you all, I'd like to move on to the next item, which would be B, for the the purchasing policy, the procurement policy.
Sure, before you move on, is there any questions from the council regarding the council policy manual?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So this will be just kind of a living document that we will continue to build upon throughout the months and possibly years of the city. Amend, change, grow, things like that for different policies for the city.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is correct. This is where, as we build it out, I plan on putting like our digital asset policy, our HR policies, our
Social
procedures
media
for those
policy.
things. Yeah, anything like that we will handle internal and how we handle structures, our organizational chart. Like all that will live inside of this. That way we don't have to have 2 reads in order to come back and change it or anything of that nature. It's something that we can discuss with you all as well as come before the public in one meeting and then discuss if we need any changes or anything like that.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
Can we change the name of it from council policy manual to maybe city policy manual, something along those lines, or does it need it? I feel like the name sounds like it's governing the council. And not that I don't want to be governed, but I think this is more to govern the city business than just something to consider.
Yes, sir. We can change it. Only name it council because and I took a different approach, right? This is y'all's guidelines to govern us, right?
Right.
And staff. And so, but I don't mind changing it to city. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I got one. Is there a travel reimbursement in the works? Policy?
I can work on that.
Yeah.
I've got that lined up in my notes.
I mean, just come back from Clifton for education, yeah.
All right. We won't. Well, do you want us, interim city manager? Do you want us to take a vote on changing the name? Is that appropriate? Should we do that, or do you think we can?
I think we can do that without changing it because this was just a discussion item and the title is not really set. The only reason why I didn't want to lead with the next item because the next item for the policy would be the first chapter of the council of the city policy manual.
Just give it a 3-letter acronym like government always does.
Oh, okay, yeah. You can call it. Well,
I'm just kidding.
I look. I almost said, yeah. No.
CPM.
COM. I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor. if I
Sure.
may. So one of the things you mentioned is kind of, or I think Councilman President, you mentioned it's kind of a living, breathing document.
Mhm.
What is the amendment process to the policy manual look like? So it's just, you mentioned we don't have to go through first, second read, so we just suggest a change, we vote on it, and we move forward?
That is exactly it.
Okay.
So unlike if we do an ordinance change, anything that lives inside of our ordinances has to have a first and second reading public comment, right? This would create a living document to where we can govern ourselves procedurally to where if we wanted to make an amendment or anything like that, then I can just come before you like I am today and then just say, or even in the middle of it, you all can make a motion to vote to change it and then we can update the document from it and then that solidifies the document.
Any other questions on item JA? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item JB. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jamie.
So we took a first stab at doing what we call the procurement policy. This is what will govern, some of our purchasing practices. We looked at Lawrenceville's and the city that I come from, which is another city in Georgia, and we kind of built out this policy. There's a lot of these amounts have to deal with when we start getting contracts and things of that nature, not so much our day-to-day purchases. But as we've had discussions before, those are things that we can amend, add, or change. The state requirement is around the same amount so far, even though that there's some legislation going in right now to amend some of those. Right now, this pretty much aligns with a lot of the purchasing and procurement policies that the state already has identified. And so we can modify those certainly to fit the needs of the city in its current state. But again, it's just, when it comes to going out for bids or anything like that, it's pretty standard with what's going on around the state.
Any questions for the interim city manager on the purchasing policy?
Yeah, I have a few, if I may. So, section 1.6.1, establishment of the position of purchasing agent shall serve as the city's principal procurement official. Is that gonna be, the individual that is also serving as our, finance manager, you said?
That's correct. So the way that it usually works is for just like this and your zoning administrator, those are dubbed out to the city manager or their designatee.
Right.
And so this is a copy of that language, but our current finance manager will serve as our purchasing agent.
Okay. Section 1.8.1, says, the number 3 in there says award is made to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. I would recommend some language in there that adds in or lowest scored, because when you're dealing with a contract that large, on competitive steel building, those may be scored bids rather than just lowest cost. So things.
I don't know if I can change that.
Okay.
Because the lowest responsive bidder is kind of the language that's used for most procurement documents across the state in the Uniform Code and the CFR 200.
Okay.
I can look at modifying that, but as far as the language as it reads right now, that's how, if we were required to look at it, or if we were ever sued from a contractor and we give them their score, that's what they're gonna look at from a procurement standpoint, is if it's the lowest responsible responding bidder.
So the numbers are actually the responsibility part. If you're getting that, really?
No, so here's part of what this works, right? So what ends up happening is when we go out to a contract or anything that's over, the amount that's set, right? And we have to put it out for bid, we have to do the RFP process. So we will have an RFP team that will include myself, CPL, and our finance manager, and we will score all the proposals and the bids that were submitted, right? The way that goes out, the lowest score and the lowest responsive bidder from a price standpoint, if it's already out for bid or RFQ, right, that is what we have to go with as a government, unless there's some flaw in it.
So yeah, I think that kind of answers my question. So when an RFP is scored, you said lowest, but I think maybe the highest score is the contract that would be awarded. But would you score pricing as a percentage of that total score?
So if the bid comes in, it's the lowest amount, we have to take the lowest amount as government, right? If it's an RFQ and we score it, then we take whoever the highest score is.
Okay.
Right? Because that's kind of what that, but depending on what the project is, if we're doing an RFQ, right, first that just allows us to go to negotiations, and then we see the contract amount, and then we can choose to negotiate from there. So it kind of falls within two categories, right?
RFQ and RFP?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I tried to explain it quickly, and I'd probably need to take a little bit more time, right?
Okay.
So here's the thing, RFQ is we're requesting the qualifications from someone. And so in that's where we're scoring it, that's where we're doing that. In the RFP, they're submitting an amount based upon the quantities and the scope of work that we've put out there. And then that response itself will give us a dollar amount that we take the lowest amount on, unless something were to happen, like we find out, from their references or something that, we just choose not to move with them. We can put it back out to bid. We can discuss it with, who the lowest responsive bidder is. You can choose to reject all bids, or reject that one and go with the next closest lowest bidder. There's other elements to it, but for the question that you're asking, I mean, I don't know if that particular language I can modify.
Are you saying that a RFQ is a request for quote or a request for qualification?
Request for qualifications.
Okay.
So with the RFQ, right, that's just basically saying, you know, we're looking for information for someone to do the scope of work for us,
Okay.
right? The RFP is when we're actually looking for a dollar amount because the scope has already been created, and we've put it out for bid to try to get a contractor
Okay.
for that amount.
Okay. Award is made to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Okay. Should we add something to qualified or anything like that, or anything in that section? Just leave it, I mean, in your recommendation, leave it the way it is?
My recommendation is just
Okay.
leave it the way we are.
Fair enough. On the sole source, I had emailed back about possibly adding some sort of documentation on that, just to have on file. Because I think we will, in coming audit, I think we will be asked for why did you sole source purchase this? Just something that's approved by yourself. You know, if it's over a certain dollar amount, that dollar amount, I think maybe it's like $1,000. Would be my recommendation. If you're gonna sole source something, and that was under 1.8.3. Emergency procurement 1.8.4. It says allowed when public health, welfare, or safety is at risk. If you can add city manager discretion in there, because I think there may be other purchases that you deem an emergency that you can't wait for council, that may come up. And I'd like to give you that authority to make that decision, so long as you see it as a true emergency purchase.
I understood, and I just do want to say that, like, anything like that, I would notify you all.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Just at that time, and
Yeah.
a lot of this will come into play more so once we take over stormwater utility.
Yeah, but if there's a flood in here and you need to do some demolition, that's gonna cost
You know.
we don't need to have a council meeting
Yeah.
ahead of time, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know that that would fall under public health, welfare, I mean, maybe safety.
A lot of this falls under, right, if we got a sinkhole and you know
Right.
what I mean, and something's happened with stormwater, then we need to go
Right.
ahead and call our contract in and have them go out there and fix,
Right.
fix the pipe.
1.9.1, all contracts exceeding 150 will require city council approval. I'd like to lower that to $100,000, just to coincide with 1.8.1. And then the last couple that I had were from a procurement standpoint. If it's not, of course, I recommend purchasing things as much as possible off state contract. It's already competitively bid, utilizing that. But if it's, my recommendation is if it's over $1,000, we'd be required to get 3 bids, and go with the lowest bidder at that point. So if we're gonna purchase 5 televisions for the city hall or something like that, of course you can use a state contract to purchase those. I don't know where it would be, but Best Buy might have a contract. I'm just using that as an example, but over $1,000, and it does become a little bit more cumbersome to go that route. But I truly think it saves cities significant amounts of money if we do get 3 bids. I have to do it on a daily basis, and I can't tell you how many times I thought someone was gonna be the lowest bidder and someone's 25% less than them, and we save a significant amount of money. Let's see here. And then there was some language in here about, or actually, I don't know if we had anything in here, about issuing POs. I don't know if we have a system for POs. I don't think we do.
Not yet.
We do?
I can prepare for you.
You can prepare a PO, okay.
So some of this stuff is stuff that we're working on internally, just to get
Sure,
ready for.
of course, yeah.
Issuing the POs is one of them.
Yeah.
There's something else that you mentioned that state contracts is something that we're looking at. I know Chandler Faith has been looking at, what we do from a technology standpoint for state contracts. I'm looking at like what it costs for like supplies for construction or anything else from state contracts.
So there's a state contract with Staples for office supplies.
That's correct.
They'll get you set up, and just for Madam Clerk, the DOAS website will, there's a state contract for doors, for 8 million things on there that you can use to purchase off. It's not always the easiest thing in the world to do, but it'll save a significant amount of money. And then just adding some language about if we're going to issue a purchase order, anything above $1,000, get a purchase order. What was our threshold for purchase cards? Was it $1,000?
It was $1,000.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
It
so
might be above that.
I think it was it might have been
It
2,000.
might have
we
been
had a daily and a single purchase limit, or did
Yeah.
we just do one?
Yeah.
Single purchase
The bank could
was-
only do one. So
Which one did we choose, the daily?
Well, the bank can only do it for the daily limit.
Okay.
I think it's 2,000.
2,500, okay. So maybe we raise that to anything above 2,500, you know, we issue with a PO. I mean, you won't be able to use your purchase card anyway, so
Yeah.
you'd have to use a PO at that point. And then the last thing I had was, what Councilman Sullivan brought up, travel and meal policy. That can be a bear, but I would like to recommend looking into that, not for this meeting, but maybe in a couple meetings, having some sort of framework of a travel and meal policy, or just reimbursement policy. That may be something else we want to add to this document here, that is a reimbursement policy. But maybe, you know, like I said, within a couple months, we can have some, because we've got different people that travel with the city. We've got a conference in June, we've got, one that just happened a couple weeks ago. And so that may be something we want to look into adding sooner than later.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for Mr. Palmer?
I have a couple suggestions maybe as well, just really quickly.
And just for purposes of Robert's rules, so what I'm gonna have you do, if you
Yeah.
just kind of discuss your ideas, and then I'm gonna have you make a formal motion to amend, and then if you wanna make a motion to amend the amendment, we can do that if we need to.
Sure.
But why don't we just discuss them and kind of get them all out there right now?
Okay.
That's okay.
So the first would just be a simple language change. I think we briefly exchanged an email on this. On purpose, after last sentence, and maintain integrity and transparency. So the addition of and transparency in the procurement process. It's just a language change there.
What number is that in, Councilman Ingram?
1.4.1, the purpose of the procurement, so it's, there's comma and maintain integrity. My suggestion would be, and I can fix the motion a little bit after we discuss, would be to add and transparency in the procurement process period. So just the additional language there. On 1.5, this may not vex anyone else, but I'm confused on the second sentence. So in the second sentence, it says, any contract exceeding 100,000 shall require disclosure of financial statements from the past 3 years. The who there is what I'm unclear of.
That would be the contractor.
Yeah, so it's for the contractor. We're gonna
Right,
add
so I
that.
just think we should explicitly state that because it's unclear to me on that. Because one could construe it to mean that the city needs to provide any financial documents from the last 3 years, except, you know what I mean, just absolute clarity on that. So if it's contractor, I would suggest amending the language there. Then the last thing is probably in line with Mayor Pro Tem's discussion item on 1.8 procurement methods. So it's clear to me that above the 100,000 mark, we have a suggested method, the sealed bidding, and then it proceeds through some of these other methods. I wonder, and I don't want to make this overly complicated, it sounds like this is a pretty well established template, but I wonder if it might be helpful to have some language that would read something like, purchasing agent shall use the most appropriate procurement method to adhere to and achieve the goals as stated in 1.4.1. So meaning, what it appears though, we're saying here is we have different methods to achieve our desired goals. We just may want to explicitly say that, because in the absence of that, we have several methods without an application of like, when do we use it?
I think I'm understanding. Which item is this again? Is one?
So on 1.8, it would almost be included there. I don't know exactly how we can appropriately state it, but the effort would be to identify that the purchasing agent shall use the enumerated methods to appropriately adhere to achieving the goal. I mean, I can write this down more clearly, but the idea is that we're stating and investing in the powers of these procurement methods to achieve the goals stated in 1.4.1. The only other item, and I don't know, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we have a $100,000 threshold. And we have a $500 and $1,000, $2,500 threshold, but from $2,500 to $100,000. it's not real clear what the method outlined is.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, I don't know, it's not clear in the document to me.
I think Councilman Ingram's right in that 1.8, and I know that's just a heading section for the 181, 182, 183. But a clearly defined process for each threshold of purchase, 0 to, again, 2,500 is eligible to be purchased with a purchase card, through a purchase order, or I guess, or a request for check, if we have that in process right now, or if we have that system capabilities. So, for instance, you know, we need to purchase something for the office through a state contract, then, you know, if it's above $2,500, then we need to issue a purchase order for it, get the item in our hands, and then at that point, accept it in, you know, our electronic system, or accept it, of course, physically, but also in our electronic system, whatever we're using, and then issue payments. We don't need to issue payments before we're accepting any type of item or service or good or anything like that, and that protects the city. But I think Councilman Ingram, you know, to his point, we have 0 to 2,500 as a purchase card, or again, I don't know if we have to request for check, but 2,500 to 100,000. Are we just using a purchase order for that, and then above $100,000, we use a sealed procurement process, sealed bid procurement process? Does that sound accurate for those three different?
You know, generally, and I'm pretty sure this, and I'll double check this, I'm almost positive it's outlined in state law, anything over 20, I think the bill now is 20,000, but anything over 25,000 currently has to have 3 quotes. And so, that's where and so there's some things that I left out just because of my knowledge, and that's my mistake, right? So we can add that in there, most definitely. Where it says, you know, anything over a certain amount, we have to require to get 3 quotes and then go with, you know, the lowest quote. And then anything that gives us that threshold of 100,000 that we can go up to with just getting the 3 quotes. Then anything after that, right, is where we have to go through the whole bid process, you know, advertise for it, leave it out for 30 days or more, you know, that kind of thing. So
I think where we can, if we can over detail out the procurement method, just given some of the, you know, some of the conversations we've all had with constituents about the new city, is probably going to do us, they'll pay a lot of favor, you know, pay some dividends into the future.
completely understandable. So what I'll make sure, you know, now with some of these, I know we've been discussing beforehand, right? I'd like to do those modified changes, but have kind of see if it's pleasing to you all, have some kind of draft already established, voted on tonight, and then we can make the changes. Then if possible, I can bring it back on the modifications or something of that nature, whatever is pleasing to you.
I would recommend, because, I mean, when's our next meeting, the 17th, is that right? If it's possible, if it's pressing to get a policy in place now, I suppose we can, but I would recommend almost getting that draft in place, giving us 2 weeks, a week and a half to look at it. Give yourself a week and a half to make those adjustments, and then presenting that, then we can look at a draft, possibly even make some more suggestions, and then come with a finalized document that hopefully we wouldn't have any questions on next time, that's ready to rock and roll, if that would be all right.
It is
And table this.
totally,
for
it's
tonight.
up to you all.
The only other thing I was gonna mention while we're still in the discussion is, I don't disagree with any of your proposed changes. I think the one that kind of does make me a little squirrely though is the 3 bids for anything over $1,000. I mean, that is a huge administrative, like, you're adding a lot of administrative. I understand the cost savings potential. I just wonder if it makes more sense, like the state standard is 25,000, if we should up that to be, I mean, you're thinking, this would mean if they buy 2 laptops, they gotta go get 3 bids.
Not
right there.
necessarily. If you buy it off of an already in place contract, you can just buy it. You know,
So you're saying you have to get 3 bids over $1,000 unless you buy it from the state contract, is what you're saying?
or there's numerous cooperatively bid contracts out there that you can piggyback off of. So, I mean, obviously, you know what Sourcewell is.
Yes, would you be okay if we added some language about using Sourcewell
For sure.
to where that is a completely separate method?
100%.
Okay.
Yep. And that.
Because that's one of the things that we've been looking at is going ahead and getting set up with Sourcewell.
I mean, that opens up all kinds of avenues for you, doesn't it?
You know, and so, I mean, honestly, we had somebody come out and kind of price out like all the stuff that we've talked about doing in this office suite, and they're, you know, using a company through Sourcewell. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And all they have to do is put their Sourcewell quote, contract number at the top of it, and it's
Okay,
good to
I
go.
understand. Thank you for that clarification. I guess, city manager, what's your recommendation? I mean, would you rather have something in place right now, or was that your preference, or would you prefer to have this postponed until our next meeting?
we can table. That'll be fine.
Okay. So then, do you want to make a motion to postpone this until the April 17th meeting?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to postpone the vote on procurement policy until the April 17th meeting.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, then the procurement policy will be postponed until our April 17th meeting. Okay, the next item up is consideration of resolution 2025-0333, which is resolution of amending the moratorium adopted January 3rd, 2025 for alcohol licenses. Ms. McQuaid is here. Ms. Quaid, right?
McQuaid, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
And so she is here to talk to us about that, so I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so as you stated, Mayor, this is a lift to the moratorium to permit the city to accept alcohol license applications, and this will be both for new licenses as well as pouring permits. The ordinance in front of you kind of details the requirements of the application, how fingerprints are handled, and the state level requirements for separation. And so, just so that you are aware, at this point in time, we'll be doing it via paper applications, via PDF, until we get this developed into the online portal. That is not going to be available yet, but that's what we're working towards. So it'll kind of be a two-step process, but we are going to be able to accept them if you approve this evening.
All right. Any questions for Ms. McQuaid on the amending the moratorium to allow for alcohol license and pouring permits?
I have one quick question.
Yes.
You said there's some language in here about fingerprinting and things like that. Am I missing one?
It's in the application, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's the application has those details, the ordinance itself, it does
Okay.
not.
I don't know, I've never applied for an alcohol pour license. What goes into that?
So it's based on state regulation. So typically, if you serve alcohol at an establishment, you have to be a certain distance from churches, schools, daycares, those sorts of things. And we verify that through a sealed survey or a stamped survey. Having a lane surveyor kind of do that distance, and then staff goes behind and verifies that it's accurate. You also have to have fingerprinting for I believe it's the new licenses, and that's just for kind of your background check to make sure that there's no state concern. There are certain concerns of state where you wouldn't be able to have that permit, so that's why you do that fingerprinting and background checking. And it has to be handled in a secure fashion.
And does every employee in an establishment have to have an alcohol license to pour? Or to serve?
Only the pours.
Only the
Pours,
pours, gotcha.
The manager would have one, the servers would have one, the dishwashers, the chefs, those, they would not.
But a server would have one instead of.
Yes.
If you're bringing drinks out, you're gonna have a serving permit. It's different than the initial licensing piece.
Okay.
When you initially license, there's certain people who can't have it, and they have to have an alcohol license for their business, and there's a category, and that's what you go and search the first time to make
Gotcha.
sure. And then the folks who pour, there's a completely different lower standard for that,
Gotcha.
that you just check on to make
Okay.
sure they hadn't been found guilty of
Serving a minor or something
before.
like that.
That's right.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to pass resolution 2025-3-33 as presented.
We have a motion from the Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Ingram. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, by a vote of 5, unanimous, resolution 2025-0333 is hereby adopted. All right, moving on to item D, which is the consideration of the contract for the city clerk. So as you all know, Chandler Faith has been our city clerk now. She's been helping us out since even before January 1st, the start of the city. So she's been working very hard. She's been working for us. We have been working hard to get a formal service agreement or contract in place with her. So to kind of govern the scope of her work and those items. So, any questions or discussion from the council?
No, I just want to tell you again, thank you for all you're doing. We wouldn't be where we're at without you. All the documents and everything you give us, thank you very much for all that.
I would ask that that you amend that contract so as not to require her to do all those insurance pieces that you would do for a big group. It's the exhibit.
Okay.
I would just ask that you delete that exhibit, but then she would have to meet those requirements for workers' comp.
It's an H.
Yes. Approve it with the removal of exhibit H.
Okay. For those at home that are watching at home, what Exhibit H is with all of our other vendors and contractors, we require them to carry their own insurance. We obviously would not do that with the city clerk because she would be covered under our insurance. So, I will make a motion to amend the service agreement contract for the city clerk to remove Exhibit H. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Sullivan. Any discussion? Right, hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All right, by a vote of 5, the contract for city clerk service agreement is hereby amended to remove Exhibit H. Then at this time, well, I should ask, is there any other amendments to the service agreement for the city clerk? All right, hearing none, I'll make a motion to adopt the service agreement for the city clerk between the city of Mulberry and Chandler Faith Pitts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Ingram. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right. It's unanimous that the contract for city clerk, the service agreement between the city of Mulberry and Ms. Chandler Faith Pitts as the city clerk is hereby adopted. All right. The next item is a discussion regarding fees for occupational taxes. I will turn this over to interim city manager, Mr. Palmer.
Hi, I just wanted to bring this up for discussion and make sure that it was said in the public. We've had some conversations with individuals who've come in, and I want to let everyone know that we are addressing some of the kind of things from the missed tiers, some of the difference in between the occupational fees. So as y'all probably remember, one of our first meetings, we had a discussion about, I think it was before I was here, I was just visiting then, about the tier system that we have for occupational taxes and how it was slightly off from what Gwinnett had been charging previously. We wanted to make sure that everyone knows that if you paid a certain rate with Gwinnett last year, you will pay that same rate with us this year. Some of the tiers have been offset a little bit. That has caused for some individuals to be paying a higher rate for their tax, for their occupational tax, and we just wanted to make it known so that you all know, in case you're asked, that they will pay the same rate as they did with Gwinnett County with us. So we're working on that, but I wanted to make sure that we discussed it in front of you all so that you all knew and the public knew that we're not increasing taxes for your occupational taxes. They will be at the same level that they paid last year with Gwinnett.
Any questions about that from the council? All right, hearing none, we'll keep moving right along. We're going to flip over to the next page of the agenda, which is item K, which is a first read of ordinance 2025-03-140. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. McQuaid.
Yes, Mayor. As you stated, this is the first read of the ordinance 2025-3-140, and it is to adopt revisions to the Unified Development Ordinance for the city to establish architectural standards for residential uses. This will be before council for second read and public hearing on April 24th, just so that everyone is aware of that. But these revisions came to kind of strengthen the design standards and architectural requirements for residential uses within the new city. So we have put a draft to you. We presented it to the Planning Commission during their first meeting last Tuesday. They did table the request for their recommendation to you because they just wanted a little bit more time to digest it and provide some comments. They received the draft about the same time as you, so you had the benefit of having a little more time. But we didn't see a reason to not present it for first reading to you this evening, so we kind of keep on that original schedule. So as you have, we haven't gotten any major comments back from them. We know we've received some comments for you already related to, I think driveway length was one of the feedbacks. Square footage for apartments, increasing that to 1,000 square feet. So comments have been pretty minimal. We are also conducting an internal review to make sure that everything is consistent and there aren't any conflicts with any other components of the ordinance. But our goal will be to have a finalized draft to you after the Planning Commission meeting on the 22nd. Ideally, we will have it even before then, just once we get comments back from them. And then there may be a little tweak here or there between the 22nd and the 24th. But I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have about this ordinance or kind of provide any clarifying information.
What would, may I ask you a question?
Sure, absolutely, thank you.
I was just gonna ask, what was maybe it seems there's always suggestive guidance that we take from, what was the root of this, the architectural standards? Was
For
it from
the reason for the change
no,
or where we...
Apologies, like the provenance maybe, was it from a certain city or?
So we've, ordinances that CPL has worked on previously, I know we've done updates for, I believe this was, I don't know exactly where it came from. I think Social Circle, Avondale Estates, Oakwood, we've done ordinance for all of them that had specific design standards. So it's best practices that we've developed over the course of our work, both as planners within jurisdictions and then also doing the code updates and revisions as well. So kind of that dual experience. We know how to both draft the ordinance but also implement it, and that really helps influence the way we write the ordinances.
Any other questions from the council?
Yeah, I have a question. How does this go in line up with the existing overlay districts that we have?
So that's one of the things that we're going to verify. At this point in time, most frequently overlay districts take precedence, but we can add a component to these architectural standards if they are stronger than the overlay districts, that the stronger ordinance would take precedence. So we could do that to kind of minimize potential conflicts. But overlay districts is one of the reviews we're conducting.
Good. Yeah, I would hope that, as I recall, in helping do the Hamilton Mill one, they should be in excess of what is already there. So if it rules, that's great.
Okay.
We might want to make them agree so that there's you don't have somebody come in and says, yeah, but over here it says one thing and here it says another.
Okay, that's a very good point.
Any other questions?
Oh, you just want to, in terms of zoning districts we have, this can be something that applies across the board. It's not going to affect some R100 versus R60 versus TND or
It would
whatever.
be for all residential development, both single family and multifamily.
So then where there are conflicts with existing zoning groups, then those would be changed as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions from the council? All right, and as Ms. McQuaid said, the second read and public hearing is set for April 24, 2025 on that proposed ordinance.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, apologies.
No problem.
May I
Question.
ask just a clarifying question on that?
Absolutely.
So if we find that there are updates to this, which as we're going through it, sounds like we're a little ways out. We don't have a lot of time, but we have a couple weeks maybe. What's the process? We amend this as we get closer to voting on it?
So you can send draft comments and requested revisions to myself, Rebecca, Jamie, and we'll work on integrating those into the draft. If for some reason there's conflict between what, say, you request and Councilman Sullivan, what you request, we would work with the two of you to come to a resolution. So yeah, I think, whether it's passing it to the city manager or to us directly, either will work.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, close that discussion. The next item, item L, is executive session for purpose of discussing pending litigation, personnel matters, and real estate matters.
We do need to request an executive session.
Okay. Then at this time, what's the topic? Is it
All three.
all three? Okay. So at this time, I will make a motion to go into executive session. Well, let me go ahead and explain for the public. For those of you who've never been here before, we have a thing that's executive session, which is closed off, so the public can't listen to it. It deals with three specific things: pending litigation, personnel matters, and real estate matters. And so the open meetings laws require or allow us to discuss those things out of the public. If you are here, this is a great time. We appreciate you coming. It's a great time if you want to leave, okay? You are more than welcome to stick around. If you do stick around, then if we do come back, what we will typically do, we'll adopt any items that we discuss in the executive session, and then we will turn around and we will ultimately adjourn at that point. So there's no other items that are on there on the public notice or on the agenda for this evening. So if you did come tonight, if you are planning on leaving, we appreciate you coming, and then we will see you if you want to come back. Our next meeting is April the 17th, but if you want to stick around, you're also more than welcome to do that as well. So at this time, I'll go ahead and make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing pending litigation, personnel matters, and real estate matters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Ingram. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, so at this point, we'll go ahead and go into executive session. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Everybody have a great and safe spring break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So at this time, I will make a motion to close the executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, by a vote of 5, executive session is closed. At this time, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Sullivan. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? All right, it is unanimous. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.